The VRIO analysis was developed by Jay B Barney, an American professor of strategic management at the University of Utah. The model was published in the Journal of Management in 1991. The VRIO analysis is part of a resource-based theory, which is a perspective that examines the relationship between a company's internal characteristics and its performance. Proponents of the resource-based theory argue that an organization should investigate the company to find the resources of competitive advantage instead of looking at the external competitive environment. VRIO is thus a complementary model to Porter's 5 forces, which looks more at external factors such as competitiveness to determine performance and profit potential. The fundamental concepts in the VRIO analysis are fixed resources and sustainable competitive advantage. As mentioned, the VRIO analysis is a strategy tool that helps organizations identify the resources and capabilities that give them a lasting competitive advantage. Resources and capabilities can be economic, human, organizational, physical, or technological. A company looks at its core competencies to see how strong they are to cope with the competition, and here they use the VRIO analysis to assess the strength of each competency. Let us review the construction of the model. VRIO is an acronym from the initials of the names of the evaluation dimensions. V stands for value, R for rareness, I for imitability, and O for organization. The model also has 5 horizontal dimensions, assessing the actual competitive situation. The first dimension at the top is called competitive disadvantage. There is a problematic competitive situation where the economic prospective results are below average. The second is competitive equality/parity, where our company is equal to many competitors and the economic perspective is average. The third is temporary competitive advantage, where our company has an advantage when compared to our competitors, but only for a limited period. The fourth is unexploited competitive advantage, also called unused competitive advantage. This dimension is about the organization's ability to reap benefits. The fifth and last is called sustained competitive advantage, also sometimes called long-term competitive advantage. This dimension is a longer-lasting advantage where the economic perspective is above average. We therefore have the overall model, where the vertical bars assess the competencies and the horizontal ones are the competitive situation to which these competencies contribute. We will now review the individual vertical VRIO elements. The first is valuable. A resource is valuable if it helps the company either take advantage of an opportunity or counter a threat due to competitive advantages, even if it cannot outperform competitors. So, it is a strength. When assessing a resource, a good question could be, does a resource enable our firm to exploit an environmental opportunity and/or neutralize an environmental threat? It can be in efficiency, quality, customer relations, innovation, or similar areas. The second is rare. It means that a resource is not available or difficult to access for other companies. A question could be, is a resource currently controlled by only a small number of competing firms? An example is if the resource is part of the manufacturing of unique or rare products. A brand is not a rare resource, as other brands in the same industry can be just as valuable. The third is not inimitable. This situation occurs when other companies cannot immediately imitate the resource or replace it with a similar one. A question you could ask: do firms without this resource face a cost disadvantage in obtaining or developing it? It can be about reputation, corporate culture, and similar non-tangible resources. If a resource is difficult and costly to imitate, it is often due to patterns or cultural relationships in the company. A non-inimitable resource often provides first-mover benefits. The fourth and last is organized. The resources themselves do not create any benefit to a business. To reap the benefits and gain value, a company should organize to gather and coordinate its resources effectively. The question here is: are your firm's other policies and procedures organized to support the exploitation of its valuable, rare, and costly to imitate resources? Among other things, it is about the company's organizational structure, strategic planning and budget systems, forms of management, etc. Now, let us take a look at how you can perform the 4 steps of a VRIO analysis. The first step is to find and define all available resources to the business. The resources listed can be human, financial, material, and non-material. Each identified resource is briefly described. The second step is to analyze the resources found. Analyzing each resource allows us to determine whether the company has an advantage or not with a resource. We therefore use the VRIO analysis for the assessment. We start on the left side by asking ourselves whether the resource in question is valuable. If it is assessed that the resource is not valuable and thus a no, then the resource does not contribute to the company's competitiveness. The resource gives your company a competitive disadvantage. There is no basis for continuing to evaluate this competence. The performance of this competence is below standard for the industry. If the resource is judged to be valuable and thus gives a yes, we continue our analysis. We have a competitive parity with competing firms with a yes, and our economic perspective is average. It is essential to understand that when you say yes in the vertical dimension valuable, it is yes throughout the whole column. We continue to ask ourselves if it is a rare competence. If we consider that the competence is not rare and thus a no, then it is a consideration whether we should improve our competence to become stronger, and therefore go ahead with the VRIO analysis, or whether we should stop the VRIO analysis at this point on this competency. With a yes in the valuable column and a no in rare, we have a competitive parity with competing firms, and our economic perspective is average. With a yes in both V and R, the competitive situation changes to temporary competitive advantage with competing firms, and our economic perspective is above average. Thirdly, we ask whether the competence is inimitable. Suppose it is easy to imitate the competence. In that case, we must put a no in column I and consider whether we should improve the competence or do nothing about it, thus accepting that it contributes to a temporary competitive advantage over competitors. Suppose we can say yes to inimitable, and thus a yes in column I. We will continue the analysis. Our company has a competence that is valuable, rare, and difficult to copy. In that case, it contributes significantly to the company's competitiveness, and we have a competitive advantage in this core competence if the organization can and will manage it properly. We have reached the fourth and last column, O. It is about whether the competence handling is well organized. If it's a no, then we have an unexploited competitive advantage. We can consider whether we want to do something about this competence so that it becomes well organized. We have a sustainable competitive advantage if we can answer yes about the competence being well organized. Our company has a competence that is valuable, rare, difficult to copy, and well organized. Thus, we have a strong competence which contributes significantly to our company's competitive situation. We have completed our VRIO analysis, and you may be wondering about the blank fields. They are empty because we do not proceed with analyzing the specific competence with a no. The third step is to interpret the results. Interpreting is a management task. The fourth and last step is to consider which competencies need improvement. Once the VRIO analysis is completed, it will allow all interested parties to observe each resource's position and identify the resources that benefit the company most. One can also consider which resources should improve their position. The VRIO analysis helps companies identify the resources and opportunities they possess. In addition, these resources and capabilities enable the company to stand out from other competitors, giving it a competitive advantage and strengthening its position in the market. Now we shall review an example of the use of the VRIO analysis. We are going to examine Toyota's car brand. Toyota has a head start in the automotive industry due to its production system. The lead time of a car is faster than the competitors. The design is average, and the quality is not, as before, significantly better than the other car manufacturers. Toyota is at the forefront of hybrid cars and stands firm with its high-service workshops. Toyota has a strong brand image based on its CSR policy and CSR activities. They have a comprehensive distribution system and are recognized for their long-standing supplier relationships. Toyota Way is a set of principles and behaviors which underpin Toyota Motor Corporation's management approach and production system. We start by looking at Toyota's organizational resources and strengths. We begin by looking at an efficient production system that is valuable but cannot be described as either rare, inimitable, or well organized. We have a competitive parity. Next, we look at Toyota's high production capacity, which is also valuable but neither rare nor well organized. Again, we have a competitive parity. Toyota's global network of manufacturing facilities is equally valuable, but has no other benefits. Again, we have a competitive parity. The partnerships with the complementary companies also score a V for valuable, but again, neither rare nor well organized. Again, we have a competitive parity. The technological competence expertise via a strong R&D department is so strong that it has a yes in all 4 areas of the VRIO analysis. Thus, it is a lasting competitive advantage. The same applies to the core competencies where Toyota has access to support from various companies in the Toyota Group. Toyota Way is also a competence that is valuable, rare, inimitable, and well organized. Toyota Way, therefore, contributes to Toyota's competitive situation. As the last strong competence, we have Toyota's famous and robust brand built up over many years. This competence is also a sustainable competitive advantage. The VRIO analysis shows that Toyota has many strong and unique core competencies and a few areas where Toyota must have its focus on improvements. There is an essential difference between Porter's value chain analysis and Barney's VRIO analysis. Porter's starting point is that all companies have the same resources and cannot create lasting competitive advantages. Therefore, Porter focuses on the OT parts of the SWOT analysis. Porter's theory is a competitive strategy. The VRIO analysis assumes that all companies have different resources and thus can create lasting competitive advantages. The VRIO analysis focuses on the SW part of the SWOT analysis. It is a resource-based strategy. Let us now consider criticism of the model. Criticism has been levelled at the resource-based approach VRIO takes. The theory fulfills itself by making tautological arguments. Because resources are defined in terms of their performance, and therefore the theory is not testable. The resource-based approach has also been criticised for using difficult-to-observe variables that make it challenging to conduct an empirical study and validate the results. The VRIO analysis has its strength in focusing on resources that are either not valuable or are not utilised sufficiently or organisationally correctly. The model forces you to focus on all resources in the firm. The analysis can help you to shed light on where a connection is, or is not but should be. Among other things, it can reveal whether there are departments that do not play together in the organisation and thus do not get the optimal input or output. The model produces areas where one can work to improve competitiveness.